Hi, everyone. Hello. Welcome to the February Open Office. My name is Simon B. I'm a customer operations and community specialist here at Monzo. Thank you. So thank you all for coming out tonight. You all probably are aware of how much work goes into putting on an event, but we all still have that little feeling sometimes, like what if nobody shows up? So with the queue going around the building, sometimes now it's getting pretty crazy. Can I just get a quick show of hands of anyone who has referred a friend to use Monzo? Okay, that's pretty much what I thought. Anyone referred more than 10 people? 20? 50? Okay, I'm getting a bit ridiculous now. But so you're all our most passionate users. You are our early adopters, the people that spread the word of Monzo, and we're so grateful for that. But there's only kind of so far that goes. We can control it, the flow of it to some degree, and obviously you've probably seen the recent referrals, get £5, you both get £5, that kind of stuff. But we need to look beyond that, and that's a big part of what we're doing this year. And that feeds directly into what you're going to hear about tonight. As you can see, paid marketing at Monzo. So without further ado, please join me in giving a big hand to Harry and Jacqui from our marketing and community team.
Hello, everyone. Thanks very much, Simon. That's a bit far, but thank you. So we are Harry and Jacqui. I'm Harry. This is Jacqui. I am a writer at Monzo. I look after our tone of voice, the way we communicate internally and externally in writing, principally. We're not going to talk about the internal stuff tonight. We're just going to be talking about the writing that we do from a brand point of view.
I'm Jacqui Brown. I'm a visual designer. I make things look really nice and look after our brand identity. I work both in marketing and across the rest of the company on our internal and external communications, which basically means I do everything that's not in the app.
Absolutely. But what neither of us are, very expressly, and I want to make this totally clear up front, is data people or actual paid marketers, to be honest, which makes this slightly odd. But we're going to be talking about our approach to paid marketing from a brand and visuals and tone of voice and design point of view this evening. We're not going to be talking so much about metrics or CPAs or anything too technical like that. If at the end you want to ask us questions about those things, feel free, but we'll probably just go, I don't know, mate. So this is going to be talking mostly about our approach, our philosophy around paid marketing, something Simon's just slightly alluded to there, why we're thinking about doing it now, and a little bit about some results of experiments that we've done, but it's not really going to be about the technicalities of paid marketing because we just don't know what we're talking about. We're going to be talking about growth, as Simon kind of helpfully segued into for us here. Primarily the way that we've grown historically has been through word of mouth. Lots of people here, thankfully, have shared golden tickets in the past or just shared referrals to their friends. Thank you very much. We love you for that. That has been the most successful way that we've grown, and it will continue to be. Because actually, that's not something that we're ever planning to change. Like, that is the sign that we're building something that people really love. And if somehow we stopped caring so much about that being a key metric for us, then that would be, I think, a sign we were headed down the wrong path. Like, we need to know we're building something that people actually want to tell their friends about and care enough about to push. And that will always, in our minds, be the most important and ideally the biggest way that we gain customers, because otherwise we lose track of what's actually really important. But equally, you may have seen, we don't actually make any money yet. We are still a startup bank and we are growing. We're growing fast through that word of mouth stuff, but we have incredibly ambitious goals to be the center of people's financial universe and be a gigantic bank that is making money work for everyone. We might get there just entirely through word of mouth, but it would be slower than we need it to be because there is competition out there and they are catching up and we need to keep ahead of the curve. So we want to have 3.5 million customers by the end of the year. If we just did it by word of mouth at our present rate, we would not quite get there. So we need to fill that gap somehow, basically. And part of filling that gap comes through paid marketing, basically, the stuff that we're going to be talking about this evening. But there is a bit of an issue with paid marketing. Certainly some people, I am one of those people, find the idea of marketing in general, even though I sit in the marketing community team, slightly uncomfortable sometimes. There is a sense that sometimes it's a bit grubby and that the gap between the way you market yourselves and then how you actually are as a business can be quite big. And we find that slightly uncomfortable sometimes. But the way we think about it is that we believe that Monzo is fundamentally a good thing. Right? Having a Monzo account is a benefit to your life, to your financial life. The more people that you know that have a Monzo account, the better off you are as a result. Ideally, there's kind of compounding effects because splitting bills and sharing money is easier. We also, the more customers we have more bargaining power as a business to help you out. Ideally, in the future, we'd like to do things like take 4 million people and say, look, big energy company, we've 4 million people are all Monzo customers, give them a better deal or we'll switch them all elsewhere. And that's not a thing that we can do unless we grow really fast with the help of paid marketing. So actually getting Monzo out in front of lots of people, whether it's through paid marketing, whether it's through whatever kind of advertising, word of mouth, viral growth, however we're doing it, we don't really see that as inherently like good or bad or ethical or unethical, because the outcome is that more people have a Monzo account and we think that's a good thing. Also, obviously, it helps us not all lose our jobs by going bankrupt, and that's great. The other element of this that's interesting is when we do surveys about why do you not open a Monzo account, what stops you from having a Monzo account, pretty much the biggest barrier that comes up every time is just kind of trust and credibility. You know, we've only been around for 5 minutes. We're a bank, but what are you? Are you really a bank? Are you legit? You don't have branches. What's the deal? Is it safe? And there's something about being out there in the world beyond your own website and app that just gives you an air of credibility and legitimacy. Being on TV makes you seem more legitimate. Being on the side of a bus makes you seem more legitimate. Someone here who's working with us on paid marketing stuff likes to say that the medium is the message sometimes. If you want to have credibility with people and you're on ITV prime time, just after the news and before Coronation Street, if that's what's on, I don't know. That helps. That lets people see, oh, okay, these people are serious. They're not going anywhere. Obviously, that partly depends on what you're saying, if you're in a TV ad, and what you put on the radio ad and on the side of a bus. But there's some element of us just being out there in the world, which will hopefully help close the gap to people thinking, is this a fad? Is this just an app? What is it? Is it just for millennials? What is the deal? So we're trying to get to that as well by being more out there in the world. But the question for that obviously is, if we've decided we do want to be out there in the world and advertising and saying things to people, trying to reach a new audience, what do we say and where do we say it? That's the question. You won't actually find anywhere internally like a brand pyramid or a brand onion or any kind of like values stuff written down. We're still kind of at a slightly amorphous phase when it comes to defining exactly what we stand for and what we would say out to the world. So that's what we're going to be talking about now, really. How do we decide what to say when we do advertising? And who do we say it to, and how have we gone about it in the past up until now?
So that perfectly leads us on to what we actually want to talk to you about, which is about the process that went into designing our first ads that we did last year, and then how they ended up working for us. You may have seen that we dipped our toes into this a bit last October. Hopefully you saw our hot coral ads that caught your eye during your morning and evening commutes. So we took over the London Underground pretty big for a couple of weeks at the end of October and over the beginning of November. We produced a run of 6,600 of these ads, which was pretty much one in every carriage, in every tube, on every line. So that was pretty big. And to be honest, if the whole of Monzo was like me and told the whole of the tube carriage to look at this ad, I'm pretty sure quite a lot of people saw it. We also did a smaller run of 240 ads in the Manchester trams at the beginning of November, along with a digital board in various locations, such as train stations and on the side of bus platforms and stuff. So why did we choose these locations? London, because obviously London is our capital city. Manchester, because we have smaller brand awareness there. So this was a real indicator for us as to see how well these worked over there. So what was the point of us doing this in the first place? One of the main reasons was pretty simple, pretty obvious. We wanted to get more customers. As Harry was just saying, that's how we're going to make money work for everyone. So why not? And for me, being a visual designer who is completely obsessed with our brand, it was also massively about brand recognition. There's a huge amount of value associated with this to help us gain trust through the amount of visibility. But ultimately, this was all part of us trying to see what kind of advertising works best for us. It's generally pretty well known that tube ads work really well. So that was kind of an obvious place for us to start. But we're also doing like a lot of quick fire Facebook ads. We might end up doing some TV ads. We might end up taking over some radio slots, seeing how that works. And we might look at loads of other stuff, but we'll cover a bit more about that at the end.
Yeah, thanks, Jacqui. So when we came to think about what we're going to do on these tube ads, by a quirk of the printing process, we could actually get 3 versions 3 different ads for the same cost. So we didn't have to just do the one thing over 6,600 panels. We could do 3 versions. So we sat around internally and went, what should we say, basically? And we came down with 3 routes that we wanted to try, because this was a chance to try 3 things, see which ones had traction. First thing we tried, the first route we went down was basically to try something feature-led, just to talk about the things just quite blatantly that differentiate us from the competition in terms of what you will get when you have a Monzo account that you don't get elsewhere. The second thing we wanted to try was kind of feeding into the fact that certainly in London anyway, the brand awareness is going to be higher. People have seen the card around. Having a hot coral card, it sticks out. You see it at the bar, you see it across the shop when people are paying. And so that's going to be a thing that people are already aware of, and it might hopefully spark conversations between people going, oh, there's that thing I was talking about. And then last point, just hopefully having a quote from a customer that is saying something really nice that we could never say actually about ourselves, because otherwise we just look like dicks if we're like boasting in a way that really seems nicer if it comes directly from a customer saying something nice about us instead.
So this is step 1, our first iteration that we wanted to take into testing eventually. So I want to just talk about the overall design angle that we went for. Primarily, we wanted our copy that Harry wrote to basically sit front and center of our ads alongside our hot coral cards. Hopefully you all remember that first time that you were in a restaurant, you put down your Monzo card in the middle of the table with a bunch of your friends, and they were all like, oh, what's that? That's pretty cool. So this is how we wanted to approach these ads, as kind of an introduction to Monzo, to kind of say, hi, we're Monzo. These are our cards. You've probably seen us about. So at this stage, it was really, really about brand awareness. So we wanted to display this in a really simple, straightforward way, possibly with a little bit of confetti to add a little bit of joy and celebration to them.
Yeah, and in terms of the content, it's pretty kind of straight down the line here. We're not really doing anything too abstract or out there. We just led with our mission statement, making money work for everybody, because that was something that was we were trying to get a little bit of traction of in terms of people associating Monzo with our mission. It was fairly new at the time. And then the first kind of 3 lines there are just listing the 3 features that we know from research tend to be the things that most attract people to open Monzo accounts, or that they most tell their friends when it comes to them kind of trying to sign people up on our behalf. So the fact you get instant spending updates, when you go abroad, it's really easy, and also that it's quite easy to budget because you have categorization and the summary and whatever else you might have. And then emojis as a little nod to our personality being a little bit different. And then the last bit saying we're a bank, try not to think like one. It's just a little bit to try and indicate there's some of our personality in there, but really this is mainly feature-led. In the second version, the first draft of the second version, you'll see again, design-wise, it's following a similar style. We've made the card more of the hero here because this one is about hot coral. And what we were trying to do here with the headline was kind of tap into the conversation that we know people are having, that we see people having on social media, that you can sometimes overhear people having on the bus of saying, oh, that orange card. What, you mean the neon pink card? No, I mean the whatever. So we're kind of gently trying to insert ourselves into that conversation by saying, oh, no, actually, we call it hot coral. And then we're acknowledging a thing that we know is going on in the world. But really, this one is just going, look, it's a big, nice card, and try for that recognition that people hopefully already have. And on the last one, this is the quote. It's not actually from Jacqui Brown in London. That's not a weird coincidence. It's from a customer. This was just the draft where we hadn't put the actual name in. But we've gone for a quote that is a big quote, making a big statement, something that's hopefully going to catch people's attentions and go, wow, this person's saying this about their bank account. What is going on there? Hopefully it's going to grab their attention. And on the last one, and on this one, the subline is the same. Join the million people who've already changed the way they bank. That's a little bit of behavioral economics. That's called social norming. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with it. When you say a million people are doing something, it makes people go, oh, well, then I'll do it as well. It's just making it socially acceptable. It's something that other people are doing. This isn't a brand new thing that no one knows about. It's legit. There's a million people involved. Hopefully, you're more likely to get involved as well.
Right, so that was step 1. Next job was step 2. We wanted to do loads of testing and feedback on our first iterations to check that they actually worked, to check that they did the right thing, to check that they looked how they should look. So we wanted to test across a few different formats. First of all, we went onto Slack, which are our internal tool that we use as kind of our social media channel to communicate with each other. As you may have heard, we're very transparent in the way we do basically everything. So this includes getting our internal feedback, which in this instance was like super, super useful. So we've cherry-picked a few bits of feedback which kind of rang true across all of the testing that we did. For instance, Kieran said, I do like this concept a lot. Thank you to Kieran. But I think I've seen better quotes than the one we've chosen to use on the third advert. The second ad might leave people confused because the card is quite clearly reddish orange in that advert. If you've ever seen Monzo card before, you will be that's a confused party parrot, if that's not obvious. So this was a really good opportunity to let our fellow Monzonauts know that these will definitely be produced with hot coral. So they would be as bright and garish as our cards currently are. They wouldn't just be trying to bake it on the tubes. We would have that brand awareness. It cost, like in production-wise, it cost a little bit more, but to get what we needed them to do, it was worth that investment. Second bit of feedback that really kept coming up from our fellow employees. Did we have any thoughts about including the FSCS logo / guarantee? Are we allowed to do that? So this came down to the fact that the FSCS and CAS logos help us really look like a bank. They set that kind of security and reassurance to customers that we are legitimate and everything will be okay if you come and bank with us. And there is loads of research that says that security is something that people really, really care about. And just saying we're secure in a line of copy isn't necessarily going to do that. So basically, yes, we did end up adding these logos to help in that sense. So this is my favourite bit of feedback that came through from Jordan. He said, I like them, agree on the quote feedback above, just wondering if we are also going to have any more punchy / funny ones. They look great, but seem to have a lot of copy on them. And I think some of the ones suggested on other Slack posts were quite funny and inviting. This is my favourite because it just clear up disses Harry's writing. Sometimes he needs to be brought down a peg or two. So I personally really enjoyed this one. On the length of the copy, we went into this knowing that there is a lot of research around this, that actually having a lot of copy on a tube ad can be a good thing because actually they're a pretty captive audience. Like on average, you'd probably spend around 10 minutes on a tube journey. So that is quite a long amount of reading time. You don't necessarily want to be staring at the person across from you on the carriage. You would probably rather be reading an ad about Monzo, hopefully. So we did want to go down that route for one of them, not necessarily all three. So that was our first section. The next thing we did was we ran a survey, an online survey with about 250 people with help from our user researcher, Samantha. From this, we took 2 key bits from the survey. First of all, people who have seen us but weren't customers were pretty interested, but less so if they didn't know anything about us. The third thing we did to get feedback was to guerrilla test it. So we went out in the public in Finsbury Square, which is just across over there. You probably all saw it in your massive long queue around the building. So yeah, we printed off a bunch of our ads and took them around. If you've ever done your own guerrilla testing and experienced the intense rejection you get when people refuse to talk to you, I feel your pain. It is really harsh. But we got some really good takeaways from here. First of all, people in the public didn't recognise from our first iteration of our ads that we were a bank. Although the ad said in there that we were a bank, it was a little bit buried and probably needs to be a bit more obvious. Second of all, they said it looks like it's for students. We thought that probably from our first iteration in the phone app, we had quite a small balance in our transaction screen, which potentially was the reason it was looking a bit studenty. So that's something we wanted to address. Third, an unbelievable vague quote from Jacqui Brown, which wasn't actually me. So the quote felt like a bit of a big claim and not really about anything specific. So for most people, it didn't really mean anything and didn't really work in our kind of trusting favor that we were trying to get from these ads. And finally, this header, making money work for everyone. Plus, to be honest, most of the other headers that we used didn't necessarily say bank enough. So were they necessarily doing the job they needed to do?
Yep. So back to the drawing board we went, and this is where we landed. So hopefully some people will recognize this from what was out in the world. This is the featureless-led one, but we changed the approach. So from a design point of view, you can see that we've added the FSCS and the CAS logos onto there. So that's the current account switch guarantee and what's up in the top right-hand corner. We've added the card number and some details onto the front of the card. That's actually Neil Lathit. He actually works here at Monzo. We did like an internal sweepstake, and he won the prize of trying to be frauded probably constantly. It's not his actual card number. And also we've upped the amount in the transaction feed, so it doesn't look like it's a cash card. It looks like the thing you would be using as your main account, which is ideally, obviously, what we want. And then from a content point of view, we've kept the social norming, the behavioral economics bit of join a million people. We've put that up into the header because it also says the word bank in it, which helps. And then the examples we've included underneath, we've just expanded slightly on what was already there. So we've tried to use some of those feature-led things at the start, and then a couple of more anecdotal points about things that actually really have happened. The time we sent someone a teddy for their newborn baby, or turned up at a music festival to replace a lost debit card. Those things actually happened. So they were proof points of things that you might not get at another bank, hopefully leading you to believe that we are slightly different without us having to say we're slightly different. For the second one, this was the one that seemed to land best in the testing, so we didn't really do much to it. Again, we've added the CAS logo and FSCS, and we've changed the card details, but otherwise, we've basically just changed the rhythm of the header. Originally, it said hot pink, orange, we call it hot coral. Someone pointed out that it just works better if you say pink, orange, we call it hot coral, so it's all on my pride, make that change, that's fine. And then on the last point, we've got a slightly more relatable, less abstract quote. So this was a guy called Dave from Manchester. He left a review for us when we get our Net Promoter Score reviews. So customers, do they rate us out of 10? Would they recommend us to their friends? He left a quote. This was the quote. We said, would you mind us using this in your ads? He said, please feel free. So that's a real quote from Dave. And it just felt like a nicer turn of phrase than the one we had before. Wasn't quite so out there. Changing your life is maybe a bit much. And also sounded like the kind of thing somebody would actually say, which quotes don't always do, paradoxically, since they're written down a lot of the time. And here they are out in the world. So this is a shot from actually on the tube. Sometimes they looked absolutely fantastic. Sometimes they did not look so fantastic. Somehow they managed to hang 3 of them that we know of upside down. How? I don't know, you managed to do that, but they did manage to do that. Thankfully, we had eagle-eyed people on the community forum, and I think someone internally spotted one as well, so we got them to change them. And off the back of that, we also got a discount, and we got some extra advertising space. So overall, it probably wasn't too bad, except for the people who just saw this and think we're complete idiots, I guess. And this was the digital one, which we put up on the billboards that we had in Manchester. So for this one, because we knew that the brand awareness would be low, we tried to go feature-led. So we're talking about updates and bill splitting and great rates. And otherwise, you can see the visual kind of assets and stuff are the same with the logos, etc. Trying to keep it feel consistent. But did it work, is the question, I guess. If you remember back to what Jacqui was saying before, the main things we were trying to do with this was to get some sign-ups right now. We wanted to prove that actually having this advertising would make people open a Monzo account. And also, would it improve the brand awareness from us being out in the world? Would we be able to track that at all? In terms of the sign-ups, basically, yeah, it did work in London. I'm not going to tell you exactly how many or exactly how much, because that's kind of data we don't really want to go public, because there might be corporate spies here. And we don't want to give that too much away. But it did work. Sign-ups were definitely higher than usual. We tracked what it was like in London versus other big metropolitan areas over the similar period, and London was higher at that time. Also, it was higher than it had been before, and it was just after as well, so we could measure that fairly well to a relative degree of confidence. And it wasn't madly expensive as well. So we obviously knew how much we spent on the ads, and we knew how many customers we were roughly expecting came from the ads. So then we could work out what is called the cost per acquisition, which is a marketing term. I don't really like that term. I don't really like talking about funnels and acquisition. You sound like the child catcher, but it's a useful shorthand for knowing what we were doing. And basically, if we did this kind of advertising, it didn't make us go bankrupt. We could get customers by doing this, and it was probably worth it overall financially. So that's good in London. In Manchester, did not work. Didn't apparently make any difference. We had a negligible number of extra signups. It was higher, but it was not higher enough to be statistically significant. So whatever we did there just didn't do the trick. Maybe we didn't go big enough. Maybe the things we were talking about didn't work. Without going back there again, we don't know, but did not do the trick. Anecdotally, this one, we keep coming back to it for a reason, because this one seemed to be the one that worked the best. We got the best feedback. It got the most likes for any post we'd ever done on Instagram. It got the best response on the forum. Internally, the Monzonauts who were here at the time liked this one the best. Why is that? Is it because it has the fewest words? I hope not. but maybe that's why. Also, probably because it's the one that refers to the fact that if you're already a fan of Monzo, you're aware of the fact that color is a thing that people talk about, and so you're already bought into it. I don't know, but this one seemed to be the best one. And actually, we've seen in other advertising we've done on social media since, things like Facebook, that this is the one that tends to, the bit of the kind of the assets, the copy and the design seems to be the bits that do overall the best. So something about this is working really well. Not entirely sure what it is just yet.
So, what's now, we hear you ask? And that's a very good question. We're looking at something a little bit bigger. You might have seen Angus recently asking on the community forum for you to tell us how you sell Monzo to other people. That's one of the few things that we're doing in advance of a big campaign that is coming pretty soon. So, drum roll, please. No chance. Obviously, we can't give you any details about that right now because that would just be absolutely foolish. So you'll just have to come back for another open office to later on to find out more about that. But we thank you. I'm about to trip over right at the end of it. We thank you so much for coming. And if you have any questions for us, then we'll try and answer them. Nothing about numbers or data, please.
Thanks, everyone. Can we get a big round of applause for Harry and Jacqui? Not going over there. This lovely orange box is our Catchbox microphone. Usually we throw it around, but we don't want to be sued, so we're not going to do that. We're just going to pass it around. So if you put your hands up if you have a question, we'll get this box passed around.
Thank you for hosting such a nice event. I've got a question around Manchester. So it didn't quite work in Manchester. Are you guys considering going again, maybe around student season and aiming at the students during fresh affairs and stuff?
Yeah, so we went quite small there because it was an opportunity we had that we could fold into the costs we were already doing. We would definitely think about doing it again, maybe something around like a student ambassador thing. I know that's a thing we did in the dim and distant past, well before my time. Didn't work at the time, but probably because we didn't have the scale to support it. Maybe it's something we would do again. Honestly, at this point, there's very little that we've ruled out, to be honest. We definitely don't want this to, we're not just going to be advertising in London. Like, it's a national company, we have customers all over the country, and certainly big cities are definitely going to be part of it. So yeah, we'll definitely go back.
Hi, so this question is about referrals. How come you've started so late? Via Van, for example, started really, really early with a £20 free credit, and PayPal back in the day also started really early. Why this late?
Honestly, don't know. This is what happens when you get a writer and a designer, and then you ask them about paid marketing. Yeah, I would be making an uneducated guess, but put it on the forum, and someone from product will probably come and answer.
I think ultimately, like, our natural word of mouth is still like working pretty well, right? So this a lot of this is testing to see how much better that can get. I mean, we are, from what I can tell, the kind of give 5, get 5 stuff we're doing with golden tickets is working really well. So like we are still exploring around this, and hopefully we'll see some extra growth from that.
Yeah, that's right. Was anyone with us in 2016 as a customer? Anyone here? Okay, so golden tickets started at the same time as we did real world marketing thing in Old Street, where we took over Old Street Tube Station. I don't know if anyone remembers that, and we did deals with a bunch of merchants around there. That did not work, and then golden tickets just went boo like that, and the real world thing did not work. So I think we just went with that for a while because it was working so well and wasn't really costing us anything. So that's pretty much why. So, yeah. Run to the back.
My question is about the credits and debits you had on the phone. How much thought did you put into what they were, and also the amounts? I noticed salary worked out about 25k a year, and I think you then said that feedback was that it seemed quite studenty, and I wonder if maybe if you hadn't done that questionnaire on the street out there, Finsbury Square, you might not have been told that was a student salary.
Right. We did put some thought into what the transactions were on the screen. Obviously, you can see TFL are up there, which kind of made sense since it was being featured in the tube. So that was we thought it was quite a nice, like, quirky little design thing. We wanted to also show like how easy the like split bill, pay someone. So we've got a thanks for dinner from Yehudi, and a salary. I guess we ended up including the salary to show that that was an extra thing, that it wasn't simply just a student budgeting tool, right? The amount of the salary, like, wasn't necessarily thought out too well. It was just kind of probably a average number that didn't seem too kind of far-fetched of this is just for people earning like 30, 40, 50K. So some thought, probably not as much thought as you were hoping for, but yeah, it was considered.
I think it's really tricky with that one as well. Obviously, so when we showed it to people, it was the Guerrilla testing. So we literally had a panel and we showed it to them for about 15 seconds. And I don't know how many of them were looking in detail and working out what that looks like annualized. I think the number at the top was definitely more of an issue, where it said 240 quid or whatever it did in the actual total. And that was a thing that people did seem to latch onto a little bit. I don't know if they looked into the other bit in too much detail, but maybe they did.
Like pass the parcel.
Hello. I think the student thing's quite interesting because these are the people that are probably most likely to download the app and open an account. But there's a bit of a concern, at least in my experience, in how students use the app, i.e., they open an account and then they deposit a week's worth of money in there and then spend that money. How are we looking to engage these students to make them put all of their student finance into this Monzo account instead of just using it as a cash card?
Again, it's a question probably for a product person looking at the main account stuff. But from my point of view, thinking about it as like writing about the features that we launch, ideally there shouldn't be anybody who would look at the app and go, this isn't something suitable for me. Like, we try and make it easy as you possibly can to put money into it, take money out of it, move money around, and categorize the spending that you're doing in there. If you want to have an account and you just put cash on it and then you spend it till it's gone, go nuts. Obviously, that's not as great for us, but that's not what it's all about. It's if it's useful for you. What we're trying to do at the minute, I know internally, is make the summary feature more useful. Again, if you start asking me loads of questions about the summary, I'm going to say I don't know. But I do know that we're working on it, because that at the minute doesn't work for everybody depending on the frequency with which you get paid your lump sum of money. So for a student who gets their money less regularly than a month, it's not so useful. So we're looking at different ways of making that more useful. I would think, having been a student, if that had been around at the time and I could measure my spending more easily, that would have made my life less fraught at certain times of the year.
I think ultimately, like, the problem that you're bringing up is the transition from us being like being known as a prepaid card, into encouraging people to go #for Monzo. And like, we are working on initiatives to kind of help people kind of work towards this point. That is something we're looking into. But yeah, that has been one of our main problems, moving away from that mentality of our customers. But yeah, we are working on it.
Where's it going?
Hi. I was just wondering, now that you're moving into more of a kind of paid marketing space, especially if you start moving into channels like TV, do you think you'll start developing a kind of bigger brand comm strategy, as opposed to just kind of, I feel like there's a bit of more risk when you're buying bigger media rather than just kind of small train carriage spaces where you can kind of play around with messages. Do you think you'll start developing a kind of more thought through strategy that will kind of lead you to a creative idea?
Yes. Yeah. One thing, yeah, it's terrifying, deciding what that is. But that is one of the reasons we first went in to start and exploring it. We will be coming up with campaign messages. it won't stay the same through every campaign that we do, but it's something really important, and we are currently exploring it. So watch this space.
In terms of your creative work, did you do that all internally, or did you work with agencies? And what do you prefer doing?
Could you not tell it was all internally? Yeah, we did do that all
Ouch.
internally. Yeah. Yes. So up until what we're doing at the moment, we've pretty much done it all internally. Yeah.
Cool. And is that also translating to sort of below the line stuff with social media and emails? That's all done internally as well.
Yeah. So there is we use an agency at the moment who do some social media advertising. So things on Facebook, for example, is predominantly the one.
Yeah.
But every email you get, everything you see on social media that's tweeted directly from an account that's not an ad.
Yeah.
And everything like that is definitely all in house. Yeah.
Yeah. And with your new campaign, you're working with agencies. You're starting to reach out to agencies.
Yeah, which is a change in the dynamic of what we've done before.
Right.
I came from an agency background before I came here.
As did I.
And it's weird being on the other end of it.
Yeah.
But nice. But also because of that, probably we're interfering with them more than they would probably like. But yeah, we've made sure it's a very, very close process. Probably more close than they are used to and would like, but we're very conscious this is the first time we've done it.
Yeah.
And although people have a nice idea of our brand and it does seem to feel like a thing, we actually don't have it written down anywhere, like what our brand positioning is. So we have to stay quite close to make sure people articulate it in the right way.
Sure. Thank you.
Hi, so you said that one of the goals of the campaign was to increase brand awareness. Was it a conscious decision not to really focus on the multicolored M? Because it's not like on the ad there at all, really. I was wondering if that was on purpose or there's another reason.
That's an interesting question. I'm loath to answer this because we'll see what happens with the multicolored M. Basically, to be totally transparent, I started here about like 5-6 months ago and was completely against the multicolored M, and I wanted to get rid of it, but it has a hell of a lot of brand equity and does a lot for us because it is the second you download the app, that is the first thing you see, and it's the first thing you get to know as the brand past the card. The funny thing is, like, with the card, we don't have that, and we haven't had that for a long time. The kind of however long it was, like a year or two ago, it still had the outline M on the back of the card. I don't know if anyone still has that version. But since then we've got rid of it and we just run with our logo type. Again, it's a bit of a watch this space situation. It's something that we constantly need to bear in mind. We either need to kind of use it in an obvious way in our like upcoming campaign, or think of a way around it for the whole of the brand. But we'll see. This is just all up here right now and has not been explored properly yet.
Thank you.
I want to ask you guys, how do you think about your target customer if you have like one specific person that you're going for? And how do you take that into your decisions of what channels you use? Because it seems with you purchase the whole space of everywhere in London in Tube. You just try to go as wide as possible. So just thinking how you take your target customer into your decisions for the channels that you use.
Yeah. So paid marketing people will go, what are you joking? But I genuinely don't, from a writing point of view, which is the only bit I can talk about from with any degree of remote credibility, don't think about targeting differently, really, demographics wise. When I was working in an agency, you'd have clients who were saying these people are in this demographic and they're this age and they have this much money, and so they think about things this way. I've not seen any evidence really that you get that much differentiation. What you talk about certainly can be different, but how you talk to people, I don't really think there's that much difference. My favorite thing was always to say, footballers bank at Coots. Like I think if you go into too much segmentation, you start to overanalyze things where actually there are generalizations of what all people kind of want and are interested in. And if you're trying to be a bank for everybody and make money work for everybody, that's dangerous. Also, the more you target, the more you're tempted to change how you approach different groups of people, which means that you don't have any soul. Like, what do you stand for if you're willing to talk to people in different ways because you're trying to attract them differently? That's the thing about paid marketing that I think that makes people feel a bit grubby. Or it can if you think about it too much like that and not so much about what do we do that's really core and interesting and relevant to people, and how can we get that out into the world to as broad an audience as we can, that benefits as many people as we can, because the app is the same app for everybody. So if it doesn't work for everybody, then we've got something wrong internally.
I think something we do need to bear in mind alongside this, though, is that we do have kind of different archetypes within our customers. So like, rather than thinking of it as we have a target audience that we're trying to speak to, it's how do we speak to our kind of segments within this, and what archetypes are they, and what's the best way to talk to them. So for me, that's the better approach to go at it with.
Could you share some information about those segments? So, like, how do you guys think about that?
No. No, that's something that user researchers are looking into and exploring more, along with data. So at the moment, I don't have enough knowledge to share that with you.
Are we got? There we go.
Hello. Is there a specific reason as to why Manchester was picked over other cities such as like Birmingham, Glasgow, Cardiff, for example?
I think it was because we were doing the tube panels. It was relatively easy from like the design point of view to do the two things, and actually we got a deal on the two things together. So where we picked and what we did at the time, and the fact it was on the tube, was because that was the opportunity at the time to do some advertising on the tube. It was not, we planned it for 6 months and went, here's what we're going to do and where. It was kind of an MVP version of a paid marketing campaign. In much the same way we release features, it was kind of V1, what can we do quickly now, easily, and then see what works, and then build on it from there.
Hi. My question is a regulation question. How did the regulators think about the fact that you said 1 million people changed the way they bank? Because how do you define change the way they bank? If that makes sense.
Well, this got signed off internally, and we didn't get in trouble for it. So,
Okay.
so far, I think. I mean, you get into murky territory with some things you say. I don't think there's particularly anything wrong with saying change the way they bank. They've literally changed the bank they use, which changes the way they bank. I think any lawyer with a bit of education could get you around that.
So 1 million people actually moved to a different bank is.
Well, no, but if you have two bank accounts, you've changed the way you bank from 1 to 2. Like, you know. I don't know there's any regulation that says you can't say that.
Okay, that's fair enough. Because I know, I think, was it Revolut had a bit of a hoo-ha with the Valentine's Day thing or something?
Yeah.
I'm not. I think it was Revolut. Yeah.
Yes. That was slightly different though.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Are you a regulator?
No.
Do you want to talk?
I hate regulators. No.
Well, we love regulators, and as far as we thanks. And as far as we know, this is okay, and we haven't got in trouble
All
for
right,
it.
fair
But
enough.
everything we do internally like this goes through our legal team compliance regulation before it goes out the door.
All right,
and
cool.
no one put the red flag out for this.
Simon, there's someone behind you.
You've mentioned a lot about like just general accounts and stuff. Business accounts, when's that gonna like be rolled out and stuff, or is there any specific features that you guys will have that others won't?
Specific features, no, but if you want to put your name down on the waiting list for a business account, it's live on the website now. If you go and search for Monzo business accounts, you can put yourself down for it. It's not a waiting list, it's register your interest for a business account, because we're doing a very, very, very small trial of it right now. I can tell you about features.
If you guys need any digital help with your marketing, check out wedesignanything.com.
Always selling, I like it.
Hey, I see that the salaries come from Hot Chip Limited, which I believe is the name of your mascot. I'd love to learn a little bit more about, was the mascot going to be included in any ads, or was he consciously or she taken out of the ads?
Right. First of all, Hot Chip Limited is a real company. Obviously, no, it's not. Second of all, Hot Chip is neither he or she. It has no gender. It is a card with arms, legs, and a face.
I was trying to cover myself.
most of the face, eyes and a mouth. It can't smell. Hot Chip is a weird one. Hot Chip is very much primarily an internal member of the team. It's a tricky balance of how much we use Hot Chip externally. There are moments within the app where it appears. The message we try and keep with the use of Hot Chip is, does it ensure an element of magic in that moment? Is that a place you necessarily need it to add any benefit at all? I think the second we start overusing Hot Chip, it adds something to our brand that we necessarily don't want to be saying, that is kind of overly childish, overly like kind of cliche, look at us, our card has a face. It isn't really the way we want to go, because ultimately, like one of the things that we just discussed is trust, is this kind of familiarity with us being a bank. And the second we end up having a dancing Hot Chip running across a TV screen, or having a funny voice in a radio ad, like all that for me is kind of lost. So it's something that is probably a full-time job to monitor, especially internally, because every Monzo loves Hot Chip, and it's a very kind of easy asset to add a bit of joy, and everyone loves a bit of joy, but it is kind of toning that down a little bit. So yeah, that's the job and a half.
Toning down the joy is your job.
Constantly turning down the joy.
Could I ask? I saw this on the tube, and then a few months later saw a tube. Well, some Transport for London advertising for Starling, and with the exception of the colour cards, there was a lack of, dare I say, distinctiveness. You could be accused of looking the same and talking the same banking, but better alternatives. And as someone who's kind of willing this category on for disruption, just wanted to know your views on how important being distinctive is.
Yeah, I'm sure you've got something to say, but for one second, I was looking for a slide to put in here that I've seen, which has the category, the challenger category, the advertising, and yeah, it all looks like this, and it all already sounds like this. This isn't necessarily how we'll look and sound when we do our next thing, whatever it is that we're not saying we're definitely doing, but we might be, but we can't tell you at some point. Because you're right, they all do look and sound exactly the same. All the challenger voice banks have the same tone of voice. They all broadly have a similar these kind of panel tube ads I've seen, with a couple of maybe notable distinctions. You'll know more about that than I do, but certainly they sound the same.
But
and we do want to push that on with what we do.
But what do you believe makes you distinctive from Starling as a complete? I don't know anything about.
In terms of the banks, or in terms of
just
what we
between
do?
you two, between the challenger banks? I'm just curious. What do you believe is?
Personally, from my point of view as the writer, looking after the tone of voice, it's following through with what we say we believe. So we say we're transparent and inclusive. Starling will say the same, and generally I believe it to be true. But for sake of argument, if you were to go and look at their terms and conditions versus ours, you might see a disparity. I'm not saying what it would be, but it might be one that you would find. So if you look at what we say we believe at the core, and then how we act everywhere, I would like to think, certainly from a writing point of view, that we do that better than anyone, actually. Other stuff, we'd have to talk about what it is particularly you're looking for from your bank, because there are a lot of similar features and a similar approach, and obviously we started from the same kind of place and are trying to do things in the right way, in the same way. But yeah, we'd have to talk about more what you're interested in specifically.
Hi, I'm just wondering how you decided how much you were willing to spend on your paid marketing MVP. And if paid marketing continues to deliver, will you be willing to kind of exponentially increase that spend as long as the ROI is good, or do you have a cap for that?
I think what happened was we got an opportunity to do some tube ads for this amount, and we went, okay, and then we did some tube ads. And with that came some Manchester tram ads, so we were like, okay, let's do them as well. That was really what happened with that one. We did a similar thing. We did a very small scale thing with some, in Freshers Week, to go back to the student point, we did some digital panel ads in some student unions, but it was like one ad per student union in the top 40 unis or something. And obviously no one saw them, because it was one ad in the entire union. With the next stuff we will do, it will be more considered, and we will certainly, if it looks like it's going to work, put more muscle behind it. Like as long as the benefit outweighs the cost, then you'd be mad not to do it.
I think we have time for one more question. One more question if there's one over there. Okay.
Make it a good one. No pressure.
Hi there. No pressure on the last question. I guess it builds on the question around differentiation of brand. And I think it's interesting. I was getting into a sort of online discussion on Twitter about Monzo versus Starling and Tandem and Atom, and there's a lot of banks, challenger banks out there, and a lot of copycat tech teams who are looking and developing fast. I guess the question is, it strikes me that a lot of startups see brand as something that's quite fluffy, and something that backers won't sign off. And this is something that I've heard, which is if you've got VC funding, brand is seen as something that is a nice to have, but there's not an ROI, and it's something that can't be justified. It sounds like you guys don't see it that way and actually see that brand does have an ROI. I'd just be interested in your thoughts about brand versus performance, which seems to be something that's a very live conversation.
Yeah, I think design-wise, they go hand in hand, brand and usability sake in the app. I think quite obviously, like, brand has a massive impact. Like, so many people will have and have signed up to Monzo because of the hot coral card. That is primarily one of our kind of key brand assets, is this color, and it's almost amazing how well that's worked out for us. And you can kind of see that through the kind of progression of all these other challenger banks bringing in this kind of crazy card, because before us it was pretty simple cards that all kind of looked the same, were all quite like busy, didn't really have anything distinctive about them. So like when we kind of come in, knock people off their feet with our hot coral card, you see the other banks coming in with like their version of it, trying something that will compete with that. Personally, I don't think it's worked. Like you can't get hot coral. It's just brilliant. And ultimately, like if something looks good, it's as simple as that. If something looks good, people want it. It's the same with like all of Apple products. People want an Apple product because A, it looks good, and B, it works well, which is exactly what the route that I think that we are at. Like we look good and we work well. So yeah, to me, brand is great.
More broadly on brand, we don't have a brand team. I guess me and Jacqui are as close to it as exists, but neither of us, that's not our job. We're in the marketing community team, but we work on everything. I work on writing absolutely everything internally, externally. Jacqui designs in the same way. Because brand isn't a thing that belongs to a team in the same way that if you have customer experience belonging to 4 people in a room somewhere, then overall it's probably not going to be great everywhere else. It's a thing that kind of lives and breathes everywhere. It's also not a thing you can really define that well, although people do try. It's what people say about you, right? The brand is what people say when you're not in the room. Whoever it was who said that, is it Jeff Bezos? Someone said that. So I am quite militant about us not thinking about our brand as if somehow it's a thing that's over there, and then there's the bank and all the things that we are doing over here. They are absolutely one and the same, and everything that we do contributes to it. How you talk to people when you go into customer service, that's our brand. What our T's and C's are like, that's our brand. What the card looks like is our brand. The ads that we do, they're the brand. Everything is, because the entire experience is what makes up for it. And that's where that inconsistency between how a company communicates when they're advertising to you that can feel grubby and insincere because it has nothing to do with how that company actually treats you. And we don't want that gap to be particularly big. I can't speak to how other challenger brands are approaching it. It seems to me like they're trying to do it more the way we're trying to do it and have it kind of implicit, but whether that's coming across or not, I guess it's different.
Thank you. Can we get one more round of applause for Harry and Jacqui? Don't want any feedback. I'm not going to get too close. Thank you all for coming out again. I don't want to sound trite and turn this into like a recruitment event because it's not what it is. But I know we have some incredible people in the room. You probably inferred from the presentation that we are going big this year, not just in the paid marketing, but in every aspect of the company. So if you do think that it would be cool to work for us, then feel free to check out our careers website and apply. It is an awesome place to work, and I am not biased.
Personal shout out.
If you didn't eat yet, there's still a lot of food left over there. There's a lot of beer, drinks, things. Come and hang out, come and talk to us. We're all here, lots of staff members, lots of cool people in the room that we've met lots of times before or not met before. Yeah, so thank you all for coming out.
Oh, right.